We are live. We are live. Okay, so we have um we have about 7 people who have tuned into our Facebook, and we are excited to hear what ASAP has to offer and all the resources. So first and foremost, give us your first and last name and explain your affiliation with the organization.
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Grace Belzario. I'm the Programs Manager at the Armed Service Arts Partnership, or ASAP, as we like to say. And my affiliation with this organization, aside from being on staff, I'm also a community member. I'm a military spouse, and I also have a mother and brother who both served in the armed forces as well.
All right. Hi, I am Isaac from the Love Boat. I am you guys are believe no no let me stop playing. I am Lamont from Sanford and Son. No, still no. No. Okay. I guess I'll be Nick Baskerville. Okay, you guys believe that one a bit more, probably because of the name that's sitting underneath there too. I'm one of the many lucky people who got to be a part of the ASAP alumni, where they teach us all these great things. I did 14 years in the military. 10 of it was active duty. 4 of it was in the reserve. I got out. I'm a firefighter in Northern Virginia now because apparently I wanted a safer job than being in the military. Clearly, did not think that all the way through. But I'm here and I'm enjoying myself. I love doing ASAP run events because it's a way to kind of give back to the rest of the military community. Like most military people don't understand that they can be creative because that's not a typical thing that you do, but so many people are, and they have this rich history of experience. So now I get to help teach storytelling, which helps to bring that out. There's all these other classes that allow for that sort of thing, and that's what excites me about being a part of ASAP, helping to bring out of people things that are in there they didn't realize they had, but it's always been there. You practicing? Man, I'll
Yes,
tell
I'm
you, she could
practicing.
be so well spoken because she is practiced. She's ready for you, Facebook.
Well, you're a comedian, so I don't want the audience to hear me giggling at you and laughing at you. So I'm trying to be still trying to be professional right now, right? So, Grace, if you could give us an insight of what ASAP is, a spill, and Nick, if you could chime in as well, since you are alumni.
Sure. So who are we? We provide no-cost opportunities for veterans, military families to find belonging and purpose through the arts. This year alone, our Washington, D.C.-based nonprofit has served more than 400 veterans across 35 states, in addition to those overseas, such as places like Japan and Germany. I think there was somebody somewhere else in the Middle East, but I can't remember exactly where. And they're like just taking classes. So yeah, if you're looking at the time difference, there are people taking classes at 1 a.m. in the morning and they're excited to do so. I had one student taking improv class at 1 a.m. And I'm like, I don't know how you gather the energy to do something like really funny at 1 a.m., but they did it. And they showed up the grad show in on the ninth session. So kind of want to share a little bit about our approach. Our program consists of two flagship multi-week classes. That's Comedy Bootcamp and that's Storytelling Bootcamp. Nick Baskerville, who's on the panel today, he's actually one of our storytelling instructors, and he's also gone through the Comedy Bootcamp curriculum. Um, Other classes that we have include improv, creative writing, fine arts, and acting. All of our multi-week classes culminate in a grad show or showcase of some sort. Um, from there, many of our alums will go on to perform on a regular basis with ASAP or with their local communities. Others continue in their art form, showing their works in galleries or publications. And even further, some of our alumni will stay connected through serving community, either as mentors or instructors in the classroom. Aside from those multi-week classes, we also offer one-day workshops, which feature a variety of different art forms, such as glass fusing, uh, dance, screenwriting, poetry, British dialect, and a lot of other ones that are kind of in the performing arts realm as well. Obviously, we're not doing class fusing right now because of COVID, but we are trying to look at alternatives. So even for ceramics, being able to do kind of like a sculpey clay and teaching people basic forms instead of having to rely on a kiln. So we're looking at always more ways to be innovative and being able to give access to the arts to our military community. While our comedy and storytelling classes are primarily taught by community members using a curriculum that we've developed. The remaining programs that we offer are taught by our arts partners, or those on our arts council, and guests by special arrangement. Our organization name is called the Armed Service Arts Partnership, because our nonprofit links arms with professionals in the arts field to bring those opportunities to our community. This is kind of like a really sweet spot, because should our participants really enjoy the class or workshop that they take with us, they want to continue on in that education and skill building through that partner, that's something that we really encourage. We even offer scholarships should any class they find outside of our free programming be cost prohibitive. We always have, like, a goal to be able to provide scholarship to any kind of amount of people. But last year we were able to provide scholarship for 30 military members, or military connected community members, in not even just in Washington D.C., but throughout the nation, which is really great. Because as you know, art classes are not cheap. Actually, they're actually pretty expensive. So being able to offer that is something that has been really something I'm really thankful for, especially having been someone that is really connected to the arts. So a little bit of my background: I'm an arts major. I did art for my career for 20 years about, and I've known I was an artist since I was a child. So me being able to connect my military connected life and my arts connected life into one cohesive place where I get to serve has actually been really rewarding for me. Like Nick, seeing that transformation in the classroom where people realize, oh, I'm creative. I actually can make things. Oh, I can process, things that are going on in my life through art. That's been really rewarding to see in the classroom. And I actually even see it in 3-hour workshops. Somebody will come in and they'll be making something for the very first time. And they're like, I don't know if I could do this, seems a little scary. The end of those 3 hours, a completely different person. And you can just see it on their physical self, like, wow, there's such a transformation that just happened. Like, self-confidence happened in that classroom. Just even like courage, if you think about it, happened in the classroom, which is really fun. Um, all of our instructors, they also have the opportunity to go through teaching artist training 1 to 2 times a year. Through the training, we prepare instructors to be culturally competent, be trauma aware in the classroom. Earlier in 2020, we were able to offer this teaching to teaching artists all over Virginia through a partnership we had with the Virginia Commission on the Arts, or Commission for the Arts. So it's not just like our instructors now that we're affecting. We're being able to provide this service to other instructors that may be connecting with military service members or veterans in other spaces that we don't know, which is amazing. Um, so outcomes and impacts. So why do we offer these programs, right? I mean, I shared a little bit about my personal reasons why I think they're great, but there's another side of it as well. Our research finds that participants that take our programs, they show improved resilience, self-esteem, sense of purpose, and belonging. At ASAP, we have an evidence-based model. We don't just say improved resilience happens. We know it does through our research. We have established monitoring and evaluation system using mixed methods approach that we started back in 2018. And recently, ASAP released a program impact report. You could see that on our website, should you be interested in learning more. It's under our impact tab. Uh, you may be wondering how COVID has changed our program model. Well, we actually had a lot of change over the last 10, 11 months. In the prior years, we only had physical hubs in Washington, D.C. and Hampton Roads, Virginia. We made a huge pivot. We went to all online classes in March of this year. Uh, for us, that was like a big change. We learned how to do Zoom and stream, all those things, all at one time. We had no virtual programs prior to that. At the time, we were having 2 workshops and 2 performances each month, along with seasonal classes. When we went virtual, all of our workshops and performances ended up being weekly. So we quickly learned, like, differences between CDNs and open broadcast software, all the ins and outs of Zoom. And we made all these changes with a pretty small staff. At that time, we only had 3 full-time employees and 2 part-time. And only 2 of those 5 were dedicated programs employees. So we kind of like did a big change in small time with just a really tiny support system. As we wrapped the year, 2020, we offered 60 workshops, 24 classes, and nearly 70 performances. And we plan to continue to bring these virtual opportunities as part of our regular program offerings, just pretty much on a regular basis now, 2021 and beyond. Nick, do you want to share a little bit more? I know I've been talking a lot, and I want you to. I can just keep on going, but I want you to get some words in as well.
I was like, shoot, she giving all the facts. I'll just smile, and I would say look pretty, but you know, there's limitations. There's limitations of what I can do. I was just going to smile. But, you know, there's so much that I just, you know, ditto, cosign, however you want to say it, to what Grace has already kind of talked about. I will tell you about it from the student aspect. And this is a really cool thing. I did storytelling sort of stuff before I came to ASAP already. So I'd already done shows at the Moth and for like Story Collider and things like that. And they got recorded and put on their podcast. So that was all pretty cool. And I realized people were laughing. And then I realized people were laughing not at my looks, but they were actually laughing at the things I was saying, but I didn't know why. So I put in for the storytelling and the comedy, got into the comedy. And one of the things, besides just understanding joke structure, so it's not just I'm gonna say stuff until somebody's laughs and then we're gonna see what happens. There's actually things you have to do to cause the laughter. There's a tension you're building up and then releasing and stuff like that. And then one of the key things, I still remember this. I remember sitting there in the DC Improv, which by itself was just a cool thing. Like that's where our grad show is. You know, same place, you know, like Dave Chappelle and a whole host of other people happen to do their shows. So I'm sitting there in the basement. And the instructor said, I made a joke about something. He's like, no, but how do you really feel? Like, what is your true feeling on something? And that's where the best comedy comes from. And so now as I develop jokes, you know, and I already did this for storytelling as well, when I think of what am I going to joke about, like, how do I really feel? How do I really feel about the fact that Juneteenth is now a holiday? You know, how do you deal with the fact that the insurrection happened or the mess with the presidential stuff or how people are being treated? And so there's a way to be able to bring comedy and storytelling out of that, but do it respectfully and in a way that, in a way, kind of helps you through it too. You know, it helps give you a different perspective. And as people respond, you then learn that you're not the only one with these thoughts. Because sometimes we get left alone with our thoughts and we're the only person in the planet that thinks this way. But what comedy and storytelling helped me do is help me understand, like, no, there's lots of other people. It's just I'm the first person to say it in the way that other people got it. So it's great to be a student.
Nick, I love that you kind of geared us to where we're going in this conversation. I think without even knowing. When offline, Grace and I were talking about using this as more of as a therapeutic way to get your emotions out, whereas it's, you know, whether you're telling a joke that comes from a sense of trauma, but you're letting that out in a way that makes you feel better and doesn't negate the emotion that you have. Can you talk about how that's therapeutic and how it actually just boosts your overall wellness as a whole?
Sure. I mean, I'll talk about it a bit from its perspective. Like I went to college for psychology. I didn't finish. I mean, I showed up. The people were real nice. They seemed smart. They knew stuff. I was like really appreciative. But they talk about some of the different things that happened, how emotions and chemical changes in your mind happen, some of the reactions that happen along with all that. And so without getting super bogged down into details, what I do understand is that some of that release that happens from laughter, from joy, it's not just from how I make someone else feels, but then also how that happens for me as well, the connection and things like that. And like I said, you learn that you're not the only person. Like there's things I've said in my head, like I am the only person, I'm super duper weird, I'll just kind of accept it, right? But then I've through these programs of comedy and storytelling, I've done it out loud and realized I'm not the only one. One of the comedy bits I do, one of the bits that I do is how bad of a Christian I am, right? I try. Look, I try, but there's a lot going on. Like they give you this Bible and they say all the answers are there. But which version? Because there's a few different versions, and it's like reading IKEA. Like, sure, you have different versions, but that don't mean I understand French now, right? So, how are we getting through this? right? And I was pretty sure like I'm the only idiot. Like I used to feel like, when I was first going to church, I was there for the same reason everyone goes to church. I met my wife, she was super hot, and I was like, well, let me figure out how this works because this might be a lifetime thing, right? So, but I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out, is this where I'm supposed to be? What do I think about it? And a lot of times I felt like, well, this was it. So then from the comedy, I started making jokes about it. And what I started realizing is a lot of people had that same sort of experience. But making jokes about it also means that other people started talking about it. And then when you realize that you're not the only one, then you're actually a bit more open and understanding. And you realize, well, maybe what I went through is just a normal part of a thing. And if I could tell that to people beforehand, then that's great. People may not come to church because of whatever religious thing but they'll come to a comedy show. So if I'm telling jokes in that same span, then come on over here. This is my daughter. Say hi.
Hi.
All right.
Hey.
You got to go now. She helps me with jokes. You want to tell them a joke?
Sure.
Okay, come here.
Where do Karens live? Karen Boulevard. Daddy?
That's adorable.
I got to go back to this, okay?
My friends are playing.
Okay.
I want to play too.
All right. So, yeah. And one of the things storytelling has done for me. So there's a thing that I do in storytelling where every day I write down something that happened that day. Some memory, some thought or whatever, because later you go back and you tell a bit of that story, or it's the potential of it. How that ties in with what are we thinking and missing about is I'm remembering moments, particularly with my daughter, that there's no way I would have remembered before. I am piecing together parts of my life because now I can look back and see the parts as they kind of build and come together. And then how do I express that? How do I say that? And I would say that holds true with all of the programs. They become this way of how do you express or communicate something, an ideal or a thought. And I feel like the more individuals are able to do that, the more they can actually work through what is in their mind. What are they thinking about? How do they explain that to somebody else who it relates? So whether that be relating that idea to a friend, pastor, family, therapist, whoever it is, using these forms of expression allow you to be able to do that. And that's, I think, the first step into healing. So it's not that these can't be therapeutic. I think that they can, but you need some education to go along with that. I ain't got that education, right? But I can help you make a joke about it. Then you can go talk to the educated person.
Agree. I totally agree, Grace. If you want to chime in.
Yeah, sure. So what happens in the art classroom? What's interesting with what Nick's saying is that in an art class, they're teaching specific skills like how to structure a joke or how to use a technique. But it's through using those techniques that one, they get confident using that technique, and then they go, now how can I use it to express? Because that's like the key, right? They're like, I can't figure out how to express this. I don't know how to use this tool yet. And so we're teaching them how to use the tools, and then they go in and they may be getting art therapeutic benefits from it because they're being able to process now that they feel confident in the tools that they have.
I love that y'all are using art as a therapeutic tool to combat or to cope with certain things with emotions. I love that Nick said that it basically makes you realize you're not the only one that has these feelings or that think or has been through what you've been through. And I think that's a way to truly heal, where you can actually help others. And you did speak on that, Nick. Talk about art therapy as a whole, because y'all don't just do storytelling and comedy. Y'all do I think you said ceramics, dance, performance arts.
We do. While we're not, necessarily, none of us are licensed art therapists, so we don't do art therapy per se. But we do do a lot of skill-based classes. Again, being able to learn the skills, like what are the rules of design, the fundamental principles of being able to make a completed piece, so that you can take that further to either continue on that skill set or to do something else like art journaling or focus on a creative process that helps, that's reflective, more reflection based or communication based.
So it's overall wellness. So
Mhm.
with this overall wellness that y'all are doing, um, it creates an, I guess, an avenue of people who didn't think they could be artistic. And you did point, both of y'all did touch on this, but I view myself as not a very artistic person. I can talk to anybody in the room, but I'm just not artistic. What would you say to me if I wanted to take a class like this to start off my journey?
Do you want to go first or should I, Nick?
So I mean, I would say to you, I mean, that was me. Like if you would have told me 10 years ago that I was going to be doing comedy on a stage and loving it, that there's been times I've been talking to like 30 people in a room. The biggest crowd that I've had back when we were in person was about 1,500. If you would have told me at any point that I would be doing that and people would, I would like, no, you got the wrong dude. You've confused me with the other guy with the afro and the mustache, because that's not who I am. But yet here I am. I think the biggest thing is just simply to try. You know, not only being a military person, but I was also a military brat. And so you learn pretty quickly from all the traveling, like, look, you might as well try a little bit at everything. And so I took that same approach with these different things. Like, let's just try it. You know, last weekend I took the workshop that had to do with writing, like writing a short story, which is still another skill. Just because I was like, look, maybe one day I want to write a book. Who knows? And or maybe it's not my thing, but it's here. And then I would remind you also, it's free. Like, what's the matter with you? This is free. Come take this class. Stop playing.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's so true. On my end, I have a like creative coaching side to me as well. I believe that every person has creative ability inside of them. They just may not realize what that looks like. And people express it, you know, in so many different ways. So they maybe just have tapped into it and don't realize that it doesn't necessarily have to look like fine art. But with fine art, like anything else, you practice it and you continue to develop that skill and you start to understand like the rules that you need to create something and do it well. um but for me, like when I think of just the human body alone, like your brain is creating every day when it's making decisions and all those kind of things. And how could something that is so magnificent not be able to be creative in all kinds of different avenues, right? I am very much like Nick. I'm like, you just need to get to the blank paper and start putting the pen down. Combat the fear that you think that you're going to make mistakes. It's actually okay to do that. That's how we learn. For me, I've taught a art class where you weren't allowed to bring an eraser. You can only continue to draw. And even if you thought that something was wrong on the thing, you would just continue to draw over it and see what we come out with. One, it helped people to get past that thing where it had to be perfect or look like the photo or the image that they had in their mind, and get into the work and putting down, getting the minutes in with their craft or their skill set so that they can improve and evolve in their work. So I would definitely say for anyone that doesn't think they have the creative ability, you do. It's inside of you. You just need to work it.
I love that. I love that. So you're talking about these classes and these in a lot of your class, a lot of your students, I would call them students, um, are maybe going through some things and maybe using your tools as a resource or an alternative coping mechanism. Do they form a sense of bond or connection or camaraderie due to them being in a classroom? And I know due to COVID, y'all are probably not in house, but virtually, do they create this type of bond that they can that expands outside of the classroom? I should ask.
I'm going to let Nick go in first on this one because he has students, so he sees that bond on a continual basis.
Yes, actually, some of them. So I have a Facebook group that I started for comedy, for clean comedy, particularly, and some of the students that were um, in the storytelling class have also joined that as well. You know, so they've also done comedy. And but what I started to pick up, and not only them, but there's a few pairings of folks that they keep in contact with each other because they're like, look, we vibe. I get you, you get me, because it's 6 weeks, you're telling the story, but you're like, you have to dig deep. Because one of the key things about telling a good story is you have to show an event in your life that changed you. You once thought this, now you think this. And so that's a very deep personal thing to develop. And that's what's coming out as we workshopping it and helping with people. So now you really get to know people. And what happens is people really start to connect in the way that you don't normally do because you really know somebody else's story. And so I see it just from the short ones that I've seen all the time. I mean, students are that way. Matter of fact, the people I do one of the people that I do the Friday show with, Dwayne White, we were in the same comedy boot camp class together. We went through the 6 weeks of class. We did jokes. Then we started after that. We went to open mics and then doing shows. And then some other alumni we got together. And so now we're doing that. And so, I mean, very easily, we have become each other's support group, particularly as we're going through all this stuff, as the ups and downs that everyone's dealing with. So there's definitely that connection with the students. I've seen it personally, and then I've also seen the students do it as well.
Yeah. For our classes, we try to set up a structure in the classroom where we can create that environment. And we also have alumni mentors in there that help to check in on students and things like that, make sure that everything's going well with them. If they have questions about the art form, or if they just want to, just talk, they're there for them. And that helps to kind of like make alliances with your cohort, like just classmates in general, or people that have already been like part of the community. We try to connect them 2 ways. When we were doing things outside of COVID, like all these closures and things like that, we would have open houses about every quarter, and then we would invite all of our alumni to come and all of the new students that were graduating to come as well. And that was a way for them to get connected and continue on, building lifetime bonds and things like that. One of the other, I lost my train of thought on that one. It'll come back to me. We'll come back to that one.
It's like the Metro, there'll be another one that comes back in like 20
Right.
minutes. You just wait for it.
Well, not necessarily in Houston, but I know in DC it's like every 5 minutes, and then y'all are just like bombarding the subways. I know y'all probably don't use them right now due to COVID, but oh my gosh, the times I've been to DC, I'm like, I'm glad that I'm a fast walker and a fast mover, because if my southernness was to show right now, I would stick out like a sore thumb. But I kind of want to switch gears because Nick, you were talking about how you were talking about current events and how you use these current events in your comedy routines. Well, everyone deals with current events, whether they're in the military or they're in civilian life. Can me not being former military, or just join these classes and take in that and learn how to express how I feel about current events?
Well, so one, I mean, we take in the military community and military adjacent, right? So like if my wife wanted to, she could also take it. If my kid, who clearly is showing promise, decided that she wanted to take class at some point once she's old enough, because you have to be at least 18, right? Yep, 18. Then she could do that as well. People who also just work in the military government sort of things and are also available for all this. So all that happens in there. What comes out is a level of what is comfortable for you, what fits into the structure of whatever class that you happen to be taking. And then also, one of the things that I really like about ASAP, because this fits with just me as a person, is like, how do I convey a thought, idea, or my perspective without it degrading somebody else? Right? Whatever I think of, and I think that's just I think it's an important skill that I don't think a lot of people really hold on to. Like they want to say their idea, but they don't want to say, well, I got no filter. No, that's called being disrespectful. That's what that's called. Right? But there's a way to be able to do that. But if you have that idea and you have a safe environment there, right? So if you say something maybe out of lines, all right, so this is how we're going to say this. This is how we kind of line things up. This is how we're productive. And actually doing that. And so, you could have conservative and liberal in the same room, and they have a conversation, and it still be just a conversation, even though they don't necessarily agree or line up. So just like Grace said, some of the things we talk about, it's just a skill. It's just a matter of there's a certain structure to telling your story. And if you miss out any of it, it kind of falls flat. so I can give you feedback on the structure and allow you to fill in what it is in your mind that you want to fill into it.
So, so our classes, just for general knowledge, we tend to make sure that our classes are like clean comedy, clean storytelling kind of like vibe, so that when people come to the classroom, if there is trauma in their lives, there, we try to minimize that kind of trigger, and be able to still have an ability for you to share your story, but we may like come in and say like, hey, have you considered this, or have you considered that? And there may be people that are just completely, just they want to do something completely not even in that realm. They want to talk about things that are not even, you shouldn't talk about on stage in general. And so with those, when we're like, oh wow, that needs a little bit more than moderation, we will let them know, hey, like if you want to be successful in open mic and the comedy world, like you probably want to, consider these other ways to, do comedy, because like you can always, punch up a little bit of clean comedy, but pulling it back once you've gone that far is a little bit harder. So, we try to give you good foundation skill set so that you can take that anywhere that you go.
I love that. Sorry, I was writing down notes. I love that y'all implement, or y'all incorporate, excuse me, incorporate military adjacent. So basically family members, and I won't say friends, but family members and people close to the person in the military or a veteran. Because we don't usually think about them having to deal with certain levels of I won't say trauma, but just certain levels of what that life consists of. Can you talk
No,
about that for a little bit?
I would say trauma.
Trauma.
You know, so it's funny, not funny, right? So like in one of our last classes, we had there was a military wife, and her husband had went through some serious medical conditions and had to deal with it.
Mhm.
That's trauma, And so one of the things, and she told a beautiful story about it. It had humor, but it had heart, and it had all these sort of things, and that happens. And I think you're right. So I'll put it to you like this. So in the fire service, everyone knows that people are supposed to get on the fire engine and they're supposed to go to the call. They get on the fire engine, they go to the call, they do the thing. And so there's a lot of, hey, we need more fire engines and more axes and more CPR and everything else. Guess what? Every now and again, we need more admin people to help us do the paperwork in order to be able to get that. Every now and again, we need more people at the training academy to teach all that sort of stuff. So there's all those other support features that needed there. And that's why I think there's a big benefit for the people who help support the folks who are actually in the military. Because if we can help them, we can help support the people in the military as well.
Totally agree. That story that you referenced, that was the one that I think I was crying, right? I was watching
Yes.
this grad show and I just was bawling because I had never heard the story yet. I wasn't at the rehearsal, and I just was so touched that, being a military spouse as well, those stories, the stories that we share in storytelling, our storytelling boot camp, are real life stories. It's not a story that you make up. Like, it's not a creative writing class. These are your real life things that you've gone through. So when someone releases something so impactful, the audience is also the one who gets impacted because they're hearing a new perspective. They're getting to learn a little bit more about the military life. They're getting to know a little bit more about, oh, that military spouse that hasn't had their spouse here for 20 months or something like that, right? And you get to hear a little bit more perspective, and just care about people more, I think.
I totally agree. I think that we always say, protect our veterans, but we never think about protecting everyone that's connected to our veterans, and that's family members. I want to switch gears. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but COVID is here. So that's something that I know at the museum, we've had to implement changes, and it has affected us in ways. Of how has COVID affected y'all in the way y'all do I'm sorry, I'm saying y'all a lot. I'm from Texas, but doing your classes and your workshops.
Definitely, early on, we just followed colleges. We were really keeping up to date with the news, and as soon as the first local college said we're calling out for the year, we're like, oh, you know what, we need to move everything to a different space. And not because we needed to put out more programs. Like, program aside, it's our military connected community that we were really like, hey, we want to make sure that they're still feeling connected to something and they're able to still have avenues of being able to express themselves, whether it just be in a conversation or be in a workshop. Some people were in workshops not because they wanted to learn a skill, but because they wanted to make friends with people that were in there, because they weren't able to connect with people outside because in the very beginning, there was such a lockdown that people weren't leaving their houses at all. We ended up having, a dear colleague of ours who isn't working with us anymore. She ended up calling like a lot of our participants, just doing like checks and calls and making sure that people were okay, and that no one was feeling so much social isolation that their health was deteriorating. So I will say that COVID really hugely impacted us. We grew from it for sure. We learned a lot of where we might have holes and where we do have holes. We are still cultivating. What does it look like now that we're how many months down the train? Like, how do we continue to develop rich community? Because we know that's a place that still isn't, it's not a one for one, right? We can't trade out our in-person community for our online community. It's not an equal trade. So what do we do to help with that? And we're still cultivating ideas on it. In the very start, we talked about having like coffee hours, which we did have. We bolstered up our performances. We went from one performance in DC, one in Hampton Roads, to one every Friday, all the way through August. And I ran all those shows, so it's kind of like a 3 hour block of window of time where I'm like queuing up the stuff, doing all the performer, check mic checks and things like that, and then doing a post performer thing. But all of those things were not just to have a performance. It's so that performers could still feel like they have purpose and sense of belonging, and be connected to each other. Because a lot of how the community connects isn't just like, oh, I'm in the classroom. It's what they do after the classroom. Like, oh, are they continue to perform together? Are they continue to teach in the same classroom as co-instructors? Those kinds of things are huge parts of building community, and they happen whether you're in person or online.
Yeah, and I will say, like, one of the things I appreciated was like looking and see I got an email from Grace or I got a phone call from somebody. Hey, we're just calling to see how you doing. I'll be like, no, for real, for real. Did I owe you money? No, no. Okay, okay, we good. Okay, okay, we good. But I did that. I did enjoy that. Not just enjoyed that, but appreciated that. Even as all the other stuff would happen periodically, there was something there where the staff they were just connecting. Like it wasn't even about you have to come to class. It's just like, how are you doing? So we had those kind of conversations and all that. Yeah, COVID is. I mean, I tend to be typically optimistic anyway. So it's a bummer that I can't go to a comedy club or storytelling event like I used to. The flip side is I only have to pick out a good looking shirt. That's all I really do. And if I just wear a black shirt and you can't tell. You can't. This could be the same one I wore for all week, or it could have been a fresh new one. You don't know, and you're not gonna care. Just saying. But it is like for me, like to do comedy right, there's a lot of time spent in it. To do anything right, it's a lot of time spent in it. But knowing that's traveling to wherever you got to go and traveling back, and like my kid is 9, and I'm trying to be there and just experience all the other sort of stuff. Well, shoot, like I'm gonna be done with this. I'm gonna go upstairs, see how school went. Most shows either start. I can either see her off the bed either before the show or after the show. That's something I couldn't do before. So it allows a different dynamic in my family where I can actually be a dad, or you can be whatever like role that you have there in your family. So when stuff opens up again, I look forward to doing it. But I really appreciate some of the online stuff. It's just kind of like that unexpected gem.
Yeah. I will say, like, that's one of the benefits is we've been able to, have a lot more programming because we have a lot more space. Before, you're having to factor in, oh, traffic to Georgetown, factor in 1.5 hours to get there, 45 minutes to get back, like factor in half an hour for parking. Like now we're just like, oh, we have 3 back-to-back workshops, and one starts at 6, that's 7, and then in 8, and I can just stay in the same spot and it hosts all those things. So
I can actually attest to that as well because with here at the museum we have just I feel like our programming has just skyrocketed, but it's so accommodating because we don't have to fly people in. Like if we wanted to do this, pre-COVID, we would have to fly y'all in and then all the expenses that goes with that. But now it's just click a button and then click another button to make sure we stream and we have this great conversation. I love
Now, to be clear, you can fly me after COVID, and I'm not expensive. I mean, I'm only going to eat. That's all I do. You know, just if you give me a plate of food and a place to be able to sit down and talk, I'm good. That's all. That's all I'm asking.
Hey, I'm not in charge of the expenses. I have to talk to the CEO, but you know, I can help you out a little. I'll put in a good word. I want to talk about how you're talking about overall wellness, not just dealing with what people go on personally, but also COVID on top of that. So I think mental health has come to the forefront due to COVID. We People have always had their traumatic experiences and their emotions and dealing with that, but I think the isolation that COVID brought is was like not the nail in the coffin. I feel like that's so morbid, but just the final straw in that. And so I love that y'all's community or y'all's camaraderie for each other, just to call in and say, hey, how you doing? I feel like we have that here, and so I just love that. um Anything else y'all want to add? We have talked for a good 42 minutes, so anything you want to add before we get off?
Yeah. First, I definitely want to thank LaShawn, the director of operations there, you,
Yeah.
Leanne, and also Candace Caesar. She's friends with LaShawn, and actually, when we were talking about earlier about take this class being online, that's how this connection happened. I mean, if Candace Caesar didn't see this opportunity and take that comedy class, then LaShawn wouldn't be at her grad show, and we wouldn't be able to talk with all of you guys tuning into this programming today. So I appreciate the opportunity to share about ASAP. I hope that some of you guys will, that if you guys are military connected, will come out and take part of some of this free programming, or if you know somebody, please definitely share it. We encourage people that are new to the art to come out, because we design our classes to be beginner level, and that's why we're an arts partnership, because we tell you to go on to the arts partner side if you want to take a 201 or a 301 or something like that, because we're not the expert in art. But we are the nonprofit for our military community. So definitely thank you again for having both Nick and I just appreciate so much of your time.
Do we have any social media that people can follow? I mean, give us
Sure.
some information. How can people get in touch with y'all?
Yeah. Our website is asapasap.org.
Putting
So
that in the chat right
yeah,
now.
it's asapasap.org. And then our on Facebook, you can get us at facebook.com/Armed Services Arts Partnership. And that's pretty much like what we have for our other handles. But if you go to our website, you can pretty much get all those social links, on our website.
And go to a show.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
that's even more important. Yeah, right.
yeah, we
Yeah, well,
have.
what I like about the shows are that they're low cost, but it's also a way of supporting people, right? So it's a cool thing. So it's not like, hey, can you give me $10? Thank you. You get a thank you. It's, hey, give me $10 and I'm gonna help you laugh for another hour. I'm gonna help inspire you with a story or whatever else. And it's probably someone that you wanted to help anyway. So my preference is you just showed up, showed out, and like you did the class. That would be more fun. But if you're not doing that, at least come see what we do.
Yeah, we have a show this Friday, actually. If you go to the performance tab of our website, you'll see that we have an improv show coming up. We also have a comedy show following that. And any kind of workshop offering is on there. We are doing admissions right now for our spring classes that kick off late March. So if you want to be considered, definitely get your application in within the next few days, because we're going to be going through that first round of confirmations. Yeah.
Awesome. So basically, follow them on social media. Go to their website. Check out when a show is their next show, and then also support them, because that you support them and they make you laugh. So it's a I help you, you help me situation. Correct, guys? Awesome. Thank you again for your time, and I can't wait for any future endeavors that we have together. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.